Hello, Christian Martinson, back with Professor Elizabeth Smith. We've been talking about the four domains of human development. We have the little chart up here again, and now we're going to specifically get into using these domains. So, Elizabeth, you want to kick us off here on using the domains of human development?
Yeah, knowing what the four domains of human development are might be interesting, but unless we know how to use them, it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of an exercise in trivia.
Sure.
So what you want to be able to do is say, okay, as we look at a being
Mm-hmm.
and how we develop, how we change, and we try to put this into some kind of manageable format,
Mm-hmm.
we divided human development into the spiritual, cognitive, the social systems, and
Right.
physical, which we talked about before.
Right.
Now that we know this, we have to say, okay, I'm sitting down with somebody, they're
Mm-hmm.
telling me about their life, they've got some problems and issues.
Mm-hmm.
How can I reach out and help them and understand what's going on in their life
Yeah.
in light of what we've just learned about these domains?
Good.
So what we can first do is when you sit down with somebody, you do want to start just asking some basic questions.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask the when, the where, the who, the how, the what, the why. These are all your 5 W's and
Yep.
right and H.
Mm-hmm.
Who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they start answering this, you can start putting their answers. And if you want to talk to somebody and take notes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just even put it in your head as you're thinking about it as they give answers. And you can be thinking, oh, okay, their answer to this question was spiritual. The answer to this seems to be more of a cognitive or thinking issue. So you just want to start, as people give you information, you have to find a way of kind of categorizing it and framing it so that you can actually use it.
Sure.
If it's just a bunch of random thoughts, you're going to get lost.
Yeah.
And so are they. So
Yeah.
we're trying to take somebody's problem and just put it into some kind of manageable format.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at these four, and what we're going to do is we're going to call them A, B, C, and D. So the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
area is going to be A, and
Mm-hmm.
the cognitive area is going to be B,
Mm-hmm.
and the social systems is going to be C, and the physical area is going to be D. And in each of these different areas, we're going to look at the different variables.
Sure.
Now, remember, as someone is telling you their issues or their problems or about their life, they may touch on all four of these different parts of their life,
Right.
but some parts may be more important than others.
Right.
So we want to understand that the different variables in each of these domains actually carry weight, and some of the weight of some of these issues is more important than others. So here's an
Yeah.
example. I have a student come in who's a sophomore in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and they're really struggling. So as I begin talking to them, they're like, okay, it sounds like you're having some issues. Just tell me what's going on with your life. And what they first start talking to me about is actually Area C.
Okay.
I find out they're basically hanging out with the wrong crowd. They've got some friends that are making some really bad choices, and that's certainly influencing them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's certainly an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's hanging out with the wrong crowd. The next thing they let me know is that they have a problem with ADD. They've had that diagnosis, and they're actually getting some help with it. That would
Mm-hmm.
be under the domain of D, the physical. So you can put that actually over here on the D. Right, there you go. Because the peer choices is a social issue.
Mm-hmm.
The ADD
Mm-hmm.
is a physical issue. Okay, then as they keep talking, the next thing they're going to tell me is their parents are getting a divorce and what they believe about that. And so now, because they're talking to me about kind of what they believe about themselves, their own
Mhm.
perception of their family, this would be actually, then I would put it under B, or the cognitive, right? They're telling me my parents are getting a divorce. I'm sure it's my fault.
Mhm.
I've been really making some bad choices with my friends. I know I'm a kind of a pain
Yeah.
because of my ADD concentration issues. I think
Yeah.
I've contributed to all the stress in the family.
Yeah.
I'm the problem.
Yeah.
So that's what they're thinking. That's their
Mhm.
perception. So do you
Mhm.
see how that's a cognitive issue?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then last or not least, because they've been dealing with all of this, they've actually been going to church more,
Mhm.
and they've actually been going to youth group more,
Mhm.
and they've really been seeking spiritually. So obviously, that's some information that I would put under A, the spiritual category. So now when somebody's telling you all this information, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
trying to sort this out so I can help them, but what's the biggest issue here? What do you start talking about first? Because you can't start
Right.
talking about all of it.
Right.
So you have to choose, as the counselor, as the
Right.
parent, as the pastor, do you start talking about the bad friends that they're hanging out
Right.
with? Do you talk about the ADD? Do you talk about the church experience, or maybe even their perceptions?
Right.
They're actually, the person, as they start talking about this, they're going to give you some clues. That which they talk about the most is obviously the most pressing issue of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would start with. If they're really going on and on about their parents' divorce
Mm-hmm.
and how that affects how they see themselves,
Yeah.
I would talk about that.
Now, if you meet with them consistently, for instance, and they keep coming back to something,
Mm-hmm.
but is that something that could potentially be a distraction where they're not wanting to look at something else that you're picking up on? Um, and so are you looking at potentially the first meeting a little bit differently than, follow up and when you're meeting with them consistently and needing to kind of steer the conversation more?
Right. Yeah, you can almost look at it as, have you ever been to a swimming pool where they have it's called the zero gradient? You just kind of walk into the pool gently.
Yeah.
Well, when you first meet with somebody, and I would say this even with your kids,
Okay.
when you start having the conversation, you're starting out on ground zero,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to kind of wade your way into it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to start talking about what they want, but at some point you got to get a little deeper, and
Sure.
you need to start exploring these other things.
Sure.
And the way you can do that is just start asking them questions of saying, I think I've got a pretty good handle on this,
Yeah.
but let's talk a little bit more about some of your friends, or tell me a little bit more about ADD and how that might play into this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or else they may just have kind of mentioned the parents' divorce and spend a lot of time on how they see themselves or
Sure.
feel about it.
Sure.
Maybe you need to start saying, that family, which is a social system, that would be
Mm-hmm.
going back to like domain C.
Mm-hmm.
You might say, let's just talk about your parents' divorce.
Sure.
And to see if anything is there, and hopefully as you build your relationship with them, they're going to feel comfortable and be able to start talking about that.
Yeah.
So that's where all you're trying to do is if somebody's telling their story, you're just trying to categorize, just kind of categorize and put the information in the different domains so you have kind of a working framework to help somebody as they deal with their issues. Now, in solving this and trying to help somebody get to like the root of the issue
Yes.
and what's really going on, there's some things you want to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you just mentioned. What is the most important to deal with in the beginning is really not always the most important issue.
Right.
It can change. And what you need to be then is a good listener and
Mm-hmm.
be flexible. Really listen to the clues that the person is giving you. But you number two, remember though, start with a person is starting, which sounds kind of crazy, but start with the person's identified issues.
Yeah.
Don't jump ahead of them and say, well, I know that's what you want to talk about, but really, I think the problem is something else.
Yeah.
Not in the very beginning. Let them, they're the
That's
expert on
good.
themselves.
Yep.
Start with what their identified issues are.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, remember to be respectful. And what I just said, that they're the expert on their own life. Never take that seat of control or that power away from them. This is their
Mm-hmm.
life. Ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to control this person anyway.
Right.
So don't try to.
No matter the age.
No matter the age, right. Number four, let's say they keep saying something and you've got this idea. Like maybe they're not making, like in the case of this teenager we were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not realizing the great resources they have in their church family. And you just want to bring to their attention how important that is.
Sure.
Well, as you begin to talk about it, if you're wrong, the other person is going to tell you. It's like, oh, no, I just didn't tell you, but I'm totally aware of what those resources are and everything's fine. You have to be willing to be wrong and to take emotional risk. So if you have some ideas for the person, throw them out, but don't be afraid for them to correct you. And the last is to be very present in the moment. Don't get distracted. Don't worry about what they think of you. Don't worry about how stupid you look or how ignorant you might be because you're not quite sure what to say. You need to be there, listen to them, and as they do, if you can just simply try to get your head around some of the stuff they're telling you and try to keep it organized, and then ask questions to kind of flesh out those issues that they've identified for you, you are going to help them progress through their issues. Remember that it is a progression, it's a journey, it's not just a destination. So whenever anybody comes in and is telling you about their life, life's a journey and you're just trying to get a snapshot of where they're at and where they're going. Also, one last point is when you look at someone or you're talking to someone and they're telling you about their life, remember where they're at, then consider what is their potential for change but then also consider their motivation for change.
Yeah.
Some people like to identify their problems more than work on them, and there's not much you can do about that.
That's good. Potential and motivation
Yep.
for change. Great. Well, I think that gives us at least a framework of how we even begin to understand and use these domains, and we'll be continuing this this journey of ours in understanding these things on our next lecture. Thanks.